Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have a book review of the book Anxious People by Fredrik Backman. This is not the first Fredrik Backman book. I have read many of his books, and I have had a very complicated relationship with his books over the years, but I have overall had a good experience. Just to talk about some of the books I've read of his, I read A Man Called Ova, which I thought was a very well done book. Few things I didn't like, but very well done book. I thought, my grandmother asked me to tell you she's sorry. This was an entertaining book, but I had more problems with the pacing and with some of the elements of it, but still entertaining. I read Britt Marie Was Here, which was very frustrating. It was very frustrating. It felt like he was just retreading the themes from A Man Called Ova, but not as well, I think. I think he did them better in A Man Called Ova. So that's this one. And then I read And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer, which I thought was a brilliant novella. Brilliant. Deals with the depth of the issues of dementia and Alzheimer's and stuff. I thought this was just a brilliant book. And then the last book of his I read, the first book of his I read, the last one I'll talk about is Beartown. And Beartown was not the place to start for Fredrik Backman. Beartown is his hard look at life, and it is his most vulgar, and his most dark, his most deep book, with the most themes, and it's the reason it's the longest of his books that I'm talking about here. Of course, the second and third book are even longer and even longer. The third book in this trilogy is massive, and I haven't gotten to books 2 and 3 yet because I'm not even sure I want to because of how vulgar this one was. Seriously, it's insane how much language he used. Whereas you have this novella where he has no language whatsoever. It's like, why can't you do this but in a longer form? Anyway, so I've read his novels, and so he does. I disagree with Backman on a lot of cultural issues. I disagree with him on some stylistic issues, but he's so entertaining. And Anxious People is probably his most entertaining read for me, at least in full-length novels. What makes this book so good is the characters and the pacing and the plot all work really well together. The basic plot of this book is there's a bank robber who holds a bunch of people hostage in this apartment, and it's kind of an accident the way it happens. And all of these people have a lot of issues that they're dealing with, and the bank robber has issues that they're dealing with, and the whole story is about these people coming together, these hostages coming together. And also it's dealing with all of their problems, all of their anxiety, and all their other issues. And so it's a very deep book. But it's also probably his funniest book. There's a ton of humor. I mean, there's a humor in all his books, but this is just one of his naturally funny books. And I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the revelations as they happened. Unfortunately, this book was spoiled for me going into it beforehand because I'd watched someone's video and I saw the spoiler, and I wish I hadn't. But it was a very fun read anyway, and I actually forgot about the spoiler until about 100 pages in. I was like, oh yeah, the spoiler is... And then I couldn't not tell that it was coming. But still, it was very entertaining. I read this book so fast. I would have read it in a day, but I had some obligations that I had to get through, so it actually took me 2 days. But this book was just brilliant. It was a fantastic read. It made me laugh a lot. It made me really love the characters, and there was a moment at the end that made me cry, which doesn't happen too often. In fact, the only times it really happens with books is either the end of a long series, or if it's a standalone, it's usually done by Fredrik Backman. So Backman is good at making me cry. But man, the way he's able to weave this story together, the revelations, this is almost like a pseudo-mystery where he's purposeful. It's not that you're trying to figure out how it happens necessarily. You kind of can see the pieces, but he's purposefully just telling it out of order so that he can reveal things and make you go, wait, what? And the revelations in this book were just delightful. And the way it unfolded was just hilarious and was just sweet and unbelievable. And one of the themes this book deals with is suicide and depression. And you see people who are dealing with heavy issues and what one little action can make whether to stop them from committing the suicide or to cause them to commit the suicide. And you also see how that reacts to other people, how other people react to that. There's also themes about government and about banks and about the wealthy versus the poor. And you see how Fredrik Backman has a very specific view on banking systems. And while I understand where he comes from, I understand a lot of the sentiments he has. I disagree with him on a lot of his points that he makes, but I still really am impressed. Like, whenever you're able to write a book that makes me say, I disagree with you, but man, you did a good job presenting your argument. Whenever I'm reading a book and I say, I don't like this element of your character's life, but I still respect you and the way that you wrote it, you know you've done a good job. Because I can't help but just grin at the way he writes his characters and the way he presents everything that he presents with his morals. You know, sometimes I do agree with him on some things, but generally I actually disagree with Backman quite a bit. But it's still a delightful read. Some of the characters, the policemen, the father and son duo, they were really great. A lot of the hostages were interesting. The bank robber was interesting. The psychologist who's involved, who's not one of the hostages but is involved in the situation, the psychologist was really interesting. The way that the people view from the small towns view the people from the big cities was really interesting. The way that the mystery unfolded was really interesting. It was kind of Agatha Christie-esque, but Backman has a very unique style. That's the thing, is that you pick up one of these books and you know you're reading Fredrik Backman. And I don't know if that's because of the translation, but I primarily think it is because Backman just has such a unique voice. And this and all of his books just carry this style where he'll introduce something in one paragraph and then he will go entire chapters and you're like, oh, that's why that paragraph was important. And the way he's able to just make you feel things. There's few authors who can make you feel for characters, like viscerally feel, oh, I just want you to be happy. I just want you to win. And because of that, he rips your heart out at the end. And I wish it was a happier ending. It's fine. I never really love any of his endings. I think that A Man Called Ove and is probably the best ending. And my grandmother asked me to tell you she's sorry is also a really good ending. But Britt Marie was here, Beartown, and The Way Home, and The Morning Home, and Every Morning The Way Home Gets Longer and Longer. All those I didn't love the ending, and this one I feel kind of mixed about. Like I'm kind of like, it's good, but it could have been better. The book is good, but it could be better. Anyway, so I really enjoyed the book overall. This is definitely the most fun Backman book, I think. This is the most entertaining, the least hitting you over the head with the themes. Like this one's, it's very overt with what it's trying to say, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like depressing, despite the fact that it deals with depression. It doesn't feel frustrating, despite the fact that you're dealing with a lot of frustrating situations. It feels fun and kind of lighthearted, which for Backman is quite impressive. And I think that's one of the reasons why this book was so popular when it came out. It's one of his best-selling books, but also it was very much acclaimed. In fact, it was nominated for the Goodreads Choice Awards in the fiction category, the contemporary fiction category, and he actually got second place. He lost to The Midnight Library by 5 votes out of tens of thousands cast, if not close to 100,000 cast. This book lost to Midnight Library by 5 votes. I cannot tell you how shocking that is. That was a huge deal. I remember when that happened, when this book came out, when they revealed that information, I was just flabbergasted that it would get that close. But it was totally well worth it, I think. It was totally well deserving of it, and I want to read The Midnight Library just so I can compare them and say this one should have won or that one should have won. But this one definitely deserves to be in the conversation because this is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Fredrik Backman book that I've read because of the lighthearted nature of it and because of the way it deals with all the characters and themes. So, as you can tell, I was delighted by The Anxious People. It made me laugh, cry, everything in between. I got angry, I got happy. It's got all the emotions, and it's got all the good character traits, and it's got all the good writing elements. There's just, of course, a few cultural things that I don't like that Backman throws in his books. And, of course, there's still a little bit of language, but comparing this to Beartown, this is like a clean novel, comparatively. But you compare this to any other author, it's still pretty vulgar, but I was glad that he toned it down again. I think that I just made a mistake when Beartown was the first book of his that I read, because I was just shocked by what he put in there. But this is still excellent. So I gave this like a 9.7, I believe, out of 10, or a 9.6. Like, really, really good book. Definitely up there as one of my favorites this year. I've already made my favorite books of the year list, but this would go on it somewhere, or at least be nominated. So this was a very, very well done novel. So if you've read Anxious People, let me know what you think. Also, if you're going to talk about the spoilers of the book, please, comment spoilers so that people know to avoid your comment. But man, the spoilers, I wish I could talk about the spoilers in this book, because they're pretty awesome, pretty well done. But if you've read this book, what were your overall thoughts, and what were your spoiler thoughts if you have any? And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.